My son was standing in Earl's workshop, pricing tags in his hand, when I told him the shop wasn't for sale. He laughed. Not cruelly, just the way you laugh at someone who doesn't understand how the world works anymore. That laugh cost him everything. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Margaret Holt. I am 72 years old. I have lived in the same house in Central Ohio for 44 years. The same kitchen, the same front porch, the same oak tree in the yard that Earl climbed a ladder to trim every single autumn because he didn't trust anyone else to do it right. Earl and I bought the house the spring after we married, when the price was something 2 teachers could actually manage. I taught 4th grade at Millbrook Elementary for 33 years. Earl taught shop class at Jefferson High for 31. We were not wealthy people, but we were deliberate people. We paid close attention to what mattered. The house sits on just under an acre, and behind it is a barn that Earl converted into a woodworking shop over the course of about 15 years. He did it piece by piece, one wall, then the electrical, then the ventilation. He poured the concrete floor himself one September weekend, with 2 of his former students helping carry bags. It was his project, his room, his version of quiet. By the time he retired, that shop had everything a serious woodworker could want. A cabinet saw, a bandsaw with a fence he had machined himself, a lathe he found at an estate sale and spent 6 months restoring, hand planes hanging on a wall rack he had built, dozens of them, organized by size like a little wooden army. The smell of sawdust and linseed oil was so deep in the walls that the room still smelled like work, even on the days he hadn't used it. Earl passed 18 months ago. A stroke quick in the garden. He was 74. I don't need to tell you what that does to a person. My son Derek lives 40 minutes away in Columbus with his wife Sherry and their 2 teenagers. Derek is a good son in most of the ways that count. He calls on Sundays. He comes for holidays. He shoveled my driveway 3 times last winter without being asked. After his father died, he worried about me genuinely and visibly, and I was grateful for it. But worry has a way of curdling if you let it sit too long. About 3 months after the funeral, Derek began the conversation. Just gently at first. He said maybe the house was a lot for one person. He said the upkeep on the property was significant. He said Sherry had found some lovely places, senior communities, he called them, that were clean and social and not too far away. I said I was fine. I said it kindly but clearly. He let it go for a while. What I didn't notice, because grief does something to your attention, was that Sherry had started doing slow walkthroughs when she came to visit. Coming for coffee and then drifting toward the back of the property. Standing at the barn door with her arms crossed, looking at Earl's tools the way people look at things that are in someone else's way. She used the word liability once. Just once. She thought I hadn't heard. The real trouble started on a Saturday in November. Derek called and said they wanted to come help me get organized. I have learned since then to treat that phrase as a warning sign. They brought boxes. Big ones with handles. Sherry went straight to the shop. I followed her. She had already opened one of Earl's cabinets and was looking at the planes on the wall with the expression of someone standing in front of a wall of clutter at a garage sale. That particular look where the eyes don't really see what's there, just what could be gone. Mom, she said, not unkindly, nobody is going to use these. I said Earl used them. She said, "Earl is gone, Margaret." That was the first time she used my first name instead of Mom. I filed that away. Derek came in behind her, and the two of them began talking in that calm, practical way about the tools, as if I weren't standing 3 feet away. Sherry said she had looked up what scrap metal sold for. Derek said there was an auction house in Worthington that handled estate tool collections. He had already called them once, just to ask. I said quietly that I hadn't agreed to sell anything. Derek said, and I will remember this sentence for the rest of my life, "Mom, they're just going to sit here and rust." I did not argue. I don't argue when I am angry. I get very still, and I start paying attention to everything. What I didn't tell them was what I had found the week before. There was a box on the shelf under Earl's workbench. It had been sitting there for as long as I could remember, and I had always assumed it was hardware, bolts, maybe, or drill bits. I finally opened it one afternoon when I was out in the shop, just trying to feel close to him. What I found in that box changed everything. Inside was a small green ledger, the kind with the black spine, and in Earl's careful, even handwriting, a complete record of every commissioned piece he had built in the last 12 years of his life. Dining tables, custom bookshelves, a cradle with carved spindles, a hope chest for a woman in Newark who had wanted it for her granddaughter's wedding. Beside each entry, the customer's name, a description of the piece, the wood used, and the price paid. The prices were not small. The last page of the ledger was a waiting list. 11 names. People who had reached out to Earl, who he had intended to get to, who never heard back after he got sick. I read through each name slowly. I recognized 2 of them. One was Carol's daughter, Carol being my neighbor of 37 years and my closest friend, who had wanted a blanket chest for her new house. The other was a man named Thomas Abernethy, who had put down a $500 deposit for a rocking chair 2 years before Earl died and was never refunded. I sat on the stool by the door and held that ledger for a long time. I thought about all those years of watching the barn light from the kitchen window while I graded papers. All those evenings I had called Earl in for supper, and he'd come with sawdust on his forearms and that particular look of a man who had solved something. I had known he did this work. I had not known the full weight of it. I put the ledger back in the box. I thought carefully about what to do with it. Derek called 2 days after that November visit. He said he had spoken to a man named Gary at the Worthington auction house. He said Gary thought the tool collection could bring $8,000 to $12,000. He said he and Sherry thought the money should go toward a transition fund, by which he meant a deposit on the senior community. He had already gotten a number. He had already moved this forward. I asked him before or after talking to me. There was a pause. He said he was just gathering information. I said, "I see." He said, "Mom, you haven't been in that shop since Dad died. You told me yourself you don't know how to use any of those tools." He meant it kindly. He was not trying to wound me. He was simply telling the truth. I didn't know how to use those tools. Not yet. The first thing I did was call Thomas Abernethy. He answered on the second ring. When I told him who I was, he went quiet for a moment, and then he said he was very sorry about Earl. He said he had all but forgotten about the deposit. He said what mattered was that Earl had been a good man and a real craftsman. We talked for 40 minutes. It came out that Thomas had been a woodworker himself, years ago, before his back gave him trouble. He had followed Earl's work for a long time. He knew hand tools the way some people know music, by feel, by instinct, by something close to love. I asked if he would come and look at the shop. He came the following Thursday in a gray wool coat and walked through that barn the way you walk through a place you genuinely respect. He picked up each plane and turned it in the light. He ran his thumb along the cabinet saw's fence rail. He looked at the rack on the wall for a long moment without saying a word. Then he said, "Your husband knew exactly what he was doing." I said I knew. He told me the tools were worth considerably more than $8,000 to $12,000. The hand planes alone, some antique, some that Earl had restored from rusted hulks he'd found at flea markets over the years, were collectible, specifically sought after by serious woodworkers. The Powermatic cabinet saw was a machine that professionals buy new, for more than the auction house had quoted for the entire shop. He said a proper professional appraisal would likely come in above $40,000. I said, "Would you be willing to teach me how to use them?" He looked at me for a moment. Then he said yes. What happened in that shop over the next 5 weeks was something I had not expected, something Earl had left for me without knowing he was leaving it. Thomas came 3 mornings a week. We started at the very beginning, and I was glad of it. I learned to read wood grain before you cut it, the way it wants to go and the way it pushes back. I learned to set a hand plane, the depth of the iron, the curve of the edge, the angle of your wrists when you push. I learned that making a clean, thin shaving of wood is its own quiet reward. There is a sound it makes, a whisper against the grain, and once you hear it right, you want to hear it again. I was slow. I made mistakes. I ruined a piece of cherry on my 3rd lesson and stood there looking at it. Thomas said, "That's what scrap wood is for." We moved on. The second thing I did was call Diane Marsh at Jefferson High, the school where Earl had spent his entire career. I told her I had been thinking about the shop. I thought it might be possible to open it as a small teaching studio, weekend woodworking classes for adults, small groups, a nominal fee to cover materials. I told her I had already spoken with my homeowner's insurance to make sure everything was properly covered, which was true because I had spent 2 solid hours on the phone making sure of it before I called her. Diane said she knew 6 people right now who would sign up that same afternoon. The third thing I did was have the shop's contents professionally appraised. I found an appraiser through the Ohio Fine Woodworking Guild, a woman named Barbara who spent 3 careful hours in the barn and handed me a written document when she was done. $43,000. I had the figure in writing. I updated my will. I made several calls to an estate attorney about how the property was structured and what my options were. Then I told Carol everything, because Carol has been my closest friend for 37 years, and I do not keep things from her. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, both hands around her coffee cup, and she listened to all of it without interrupting once. When I finished, she said, "Oh, Margaret, Earl would have absolutely loved this." I believed her completely. Derek came on a Sunday in January with Sherry. He had said on the phone that he wanted to move forward on the shop situation. He was being patient with me. In that particular way, that means someone has quietly made up their mind and is now waiting for you to catch up. I made coffee first. I let them sit down. I let Sherry say what she said, which was that once it was handled, I wouldn't have to look at it anymore, and wouldn't that honestly be a relief? I said, "Come outside with me." I want you to picture exactly what they saw when I opened that barn door. The shop looked different. I had organized it, not cleared it, organized it. The planes were on the wall, clean and oiled, each one properly set. The workbench had 3 projects in different stages: a small box I was making with Thomas, a set of shaker pegs, and a little stool I had started entirely on my own just the week before. Fresh sawdust on the floor. The good kind, fine and pale, not grit. And on the shelf where the green ledger used to sit, there was a framed photograph. Earl at this very workbench, the year before he retired, holding a shoulder plane and looking up at the camera like the interruption delighted him. I had found it in a box in the house. Thomas had made the frame from cherry, simple joinery, clean corners, the wood still fragrant. Derek stood in the doorway and looked around slowly. He said, "Mom, what is this?" I said, "This is where I teach on Saturday mornings. 6 students right now. I am adding 4 more in March." Sherry said, "You teach woodworking." I said, "I teach beginners. I am a beginner myself. We understand each other perfectly." I showed them the ledger. I told them about the appraisal, $43,000, and I let that number sit in the air between us for a moment. I told them about Thomas Abernethy. I told them about the waiting list and the 3 commissions Thomas and I were going to attempt to complete in Earl's name. I said, "So the shop is not going to the auction house. And I am not going to a senior community. I am going to stay in this house and in this shop for as long as I am able to do so." Derek did not say anything for a moment. Then he sat down on the old wooden stool by the door, the one Earl always sat on when he was thinking through a cut, and he looked at his hands. He said, "Mom, why didn't you just tell me what you wanted?" I said, "Because you didn't ask me what I wanted. You told me what you had decided." That landed. I could see it land. Then he said, "I'm sorry." Just that. No qualifications. No explanations tucked in after. No but. I accepted it. Sherry was quiet. She was looking at the photograph of Earl on the shelf, not looking away, just looking, and something moved across her face that I hadn't seen there before. Something softer than I was used to seeing from her. She said, "He looks happy in that picture." I said, "He was always happy in this room." We went back inside. We drank the coffee, which was still warm. Derek asked me about the wood I was using, what kind, where I sourced it. He asked about Thomas. He asked what the students make in their very first class. He had never asked Earl a single question about woodworking in all the years Earl had been doing it, not that I ever heard. I didn't say that. I just answered him. Before they left, Derek asked if he could come on a Saturday sometime. Not to help manage anything. Just to watch. Maybe to try. I said I would ask Thomas. Thomas said yes. That was 6 months ago now. The Saturday classes are full, with a waiting list of 12. One of my students, Phyllis, a retired nurse who had never held a chisel in her life, finished a jewelry box last month that made her cry when she ran her hands over the lid. She stood at the workbench for a full minute before she said a word. Another is a young man in his 30s who works at a software company and told me after his 3rd class that this was the first time in years he had felt completely calm. Thomas and I finished the rocking chair. Thomas Abernethy's rocking chair, built by the man who was owed it, alongside the woman who owed it to him. We both found that funny, in the way that things are funny when they also matter. He keeps it on his front porch. He says it fits him exactly right. The shop generates enough income to cover its own costs and a little more. Not a fortune. Enough. Derek comes on Saturday mornings once or twice a month. He is not a natural woodworker. He moves too fast, and this work requires you to slow down, and he fights that. But he asks questions. Lately, he has been asking them of me, and not only of Thomas, which I notice every single time and which I appreciate more than I let on. Sherry sent me flowers last month with a card that said she was proud of me. I put the card on Earl's workbench and left it there for a few days before I brought it inside. I am not angry at them. I understand that worry can masquerade as control, especially when someone loves you and is also a little afraid. I have done the same thing myself at one point or another in my life. We all have. But I am grateful that when it mattered, I got still instead of small. I am grateful I went out to that barn and opened that box. Every morning when I slide the door open and the light falls across Earl's planes on the wall, I think about all those years he spent out here making things worth keeping. And I think about how it turns out he left me considerably more than I understood. The best thing he left me was the example. The patience. The understanding that you build something lasting by going slowly, by paying attention, by not letting anyone rush you past the part that matters. I am going slowly. I am paying attention. Tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered something about someone you loved only after they were gone? I think about that more than I expected to. When the young couple knocked on my cabin door that August morning, I thought maybe they were lost. They had matching roller bags and a printed reservation slip, and the woman was smiling the way people smile when they think they are exactly where they are supposed to be. She said, "We have a check-in for today." 3 nights. I stepped out onto the porch, looked at those bags, looked at her face, and said very calmly, "I think there's been a mistake." There was a mistake, but it was not hers. Let me take you back to how it all started. My husband Gerald built that cabin with his own hands. I mean that quite literally. 32 years ago, he drove 4 hours north to a parcel of lakefront land in Michigan, and he laid the first boards of that foundation himself. His brother came up on weekends. His father drove 4 hours each way, twice, to help with the framing. I made sandwiches. I handed up boards. I learned to use a level. I swept sawdust off the subfloor by lantern light on summer evenings, and I understood for the first time what it means to build something from nothing. We called it the Redbud Cabin, though that was not its official name. We called it that because of the redbud trees that line the eastern shore and bloom every May like rose-colored smoke. Gerald said the first time he saw them in flower, he knew this was the place. That was Gerald. He made decisions with his whole heart. He passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. We had 11 months from diagnosis to the end, and we spent 8 of those months at the cabin because that is where he was happiest. He fished from the dock every morning he had the strength. I sat in the Adirondack chair 10 feet away and I read, and we didn't always talk because we didn't always need to. The cabin is mine. The deed has my name on it. It is paid off entirely. It is the only place in the world that still smells like him, like cedar and lake water, and that particular soap he always used. I am 71 years old. My name is Carol Beaumont. I taught 4th grade for 38 years at Millbrook Elementary in Ohio. I know how to read a contract. I have seen every variety of misbehavior a person can produce. I am not easily surprised, and I am not easily fooled. My son Daniel is 43. He is a good man, mostly. His wife Melissa is 38. She is smart, efficient, and she always has a plan. They have 2 children, my grandchildren Eli, who is 9, and Sophie, who is 6, and I would do very nearly anything for those 2. That love is what kept me quiet for longer than I should have been. It started small. These things always do. Last spring, Daniel called to say that he and Melissa wanted to use the cabin more often that season. I said, of course. The cabin was always meant for family. I gave him the code to the lockbox I had installed 2 years earlier, after I misplaced the key twice in one winter. And I told him the blue kayak needed a patch on the front hull if anyone was going to use it. He thanked me, and the call ended pleasantly. 2 months later, I called to say I was planning a long weekend at the cabin in early July. I was bringing my friend Patris, who has been my closest friend since before Daniel was born. We had been talking about a Lake Redbud weekend since January. 4 days. Kayaking. Reading. Sleeping late. Nothing scheduled. Daniel paused when I told him. A pause that went just a half beat too long. He said, "July might be tough, Mom." I said, "What do you mean?" He said Melissa had made some plans for the cabin around that time. Something about a long weekend they had been counting on. He was sorry, he just didn't want us to overlap. I said that was fine. I would go in August instead. Patris was not amused. But I told her August was lovely on the lake, which is true, and we rescheduled without too much fuss. What I noticed over the next few weeks was smaller still. Daniel changed the subject when I mentioned the cabin in passing. Melissa asked after my arthritis less often than she used to. When I dropped off birthday presents for Eli in June, I made a joke about bringing my fishing pole up to Redbud, and there was something in the way Melissa smiled, a tightening around the eyes, that I filed away without quite knowing why. Small things. The kind you notice after 38 years of watching children try to hide the thing they know they shouldn't have done. I didn't press. I thought perhaps I was reading into nothing. But I wasn't. I decided not to wait until August. On a Thursday morning in late July, I packed my overnight bag, called Patris, and we pointed the car north. 4 hours of good radio and better coffee. Michigan in late July is green in a way that makes you feel like the world is still generous. We pulled up to the cabin at 2 in the afternoon. The door was unlocked, which struck me as odd. I always lock it when I leave. I stood in the doorway for a moment before I stepped inside. The cabin was clean. That was the first thing I noticed. Cleaner than I keep it, honestly. The floors had been swept recently. The kitchen counters were clear. There were towels on the beds that I had never owned, white and thick, folded with those little decorative points the way hotels do. On the kitchen counter, there was a small wicker basket. Inside it, individually wrapped soaps, a bottle of sparkling water, 2 chocolate bars, and a card with the Wi-Fi password on it. Next to the basket, a laminated card in a small plastic stand. I did not pick it up. I read it where it stood. Check-in time was 3 o'clock. Checkout was 11. The card had instructions for the fire pit, directions to the nearest grocery store, a note about the kayak being available for guest use. At the bottom it said, "We hope you love Redbud Retreat as much as we do." Redbud Retreat. Patris said my name. I said I see it. I did not cry. I did not pick up the phone and call Daniel right then, which was perhaps the hardest thing I have ever done in a very long life. Instead, I walked to the kitchen drawer where I keep a notepad and a pen, and I documented everything. I wrote down what the card said. I photographed the basket, the towels, the beds, the bathroom with its set of matching shampoos I had never purchased. Then I put the kettle on. I made Patris and me a cup of tea. We sat on Gerald's porch, and I watched a great blue heron stand motionless in the shallows for 11 minutes before it struck. That evening, sitting at the kitchen table with my phone, I searched the words, Redbud Retreat Michigan Lake. It took me less than 90 seconds. The listing was on a major vacation rental platform. The photos were professional. A summer afternoon shoot, golden light, the porch I sanded and painted by hand 6 years ago. Gerald's wood stove. My grandmother's wedding quilt on the master bedroom bed. The kitchen table where I was sitting at that exact moment. 47 reviews. Average rating 4.8 stars. Guests called it perfectly cozy. And exactly as described. One reviewer wrote, "The host communication was great." The nightly rate was $350. Weekend minimum 2 nights. Peak summer pricing reached $420. I found a notepad and did the math. What I wrote down made me set the pen down and sit very still for a long time. I did not sleep well that night. I lay under my grandmother's quilt, and I let myself feel the full weight of it. 14 months was my best estimate from the listing's review dates. My son had been redirecting me away from my own property for over a year. The cabin had been occupied by strangers on weekends. I might have used myself if I had only been told the truth. I thought about the July weekend I gave up without question. About the 8 months, I sat next to Gerald in that Adirondack chair. About all the things this place meant that could not be expressed in a nightly rate or a 4.8-star review. I was not going to scream. I was not going to cry in front of either of them. I have seen what happens when people act out of raw anger, and I have never once seen it end well. Gerald used to say that when you are truly in the right, you do not need to raise your voice. You just need to be precise. By 4 in the morning, I had stopped trying to sleep. I made coffee and I went out to the porch. The lake in the dark is a different creature. Black and still and enormous. The stars were out. I sat in Gerald's chair, which is the one on the left, and I talked to him the way I do when I need to think clearly, which is quietly and without expecting an answer. I watched the sky go pale gray, then pink, then gold. I had my plan. First thing Monday morning, I called the County Register of Deeds office and requested a certified copy of my property deed. The woman on the phone was efficient and pleasant. It would arrive within 5 business days. The deed arrived Thursday. I opened the envelope at my kitchen table, and I read my own name in official type, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been loose and anxious all week. Then I called Grace. Grace Harmon has been my attorney since Daniel was in middle school. I found her originally because of a dispute with a contractor over a bathroom renovation, and she has handled a handful of things for me over the years. She is direct and she is very good. I explained the situation. I told her about the listing, the 14 months of reviews, the $350 nightly rate. Grace was quiet for a long moment. She said, "Carol, they have been collecting rental income on real property they do not own." I said, "For 14 months. "Yes." She said, "That is a problem for them." I said, "I suspected it was." Grace sent a letter on my behalf to the vacation rental platform the following Monday. Certified proof of ownership. A formal request to transfer all account management to me immediately, along with a complete earnings record from the listing's inception. While I waited for their response, I read every single review. All 47. Most of those guests were exactly what you would expect. Families looking for a quiet lake weekend, couples celebrating something small. One review mentioned a grandfather who had fished Lake Redbud as a boy, and who cried when he saw the redbud trees on the eastern shore in bloom. I sat with that one for a long while. The platform responded within the week. I was now the verified property owner of record. A complete earnings statement was attached. I poured myself a glass of water. I sat down. I turned the document over and read the total line. 14 months. 61 bookings. $22,430. I set it face down on the table. I put on my walking shoes and I went around the block 3 times before I came back inside. Then I made 2 more phone calls. One to my financial advisor, Renata, who I had already begun to brief on the situation. One to the Education Foundation at Eli and Sophie's school district. I kept both of those calls very quiet. I called Daniel on a Friday afternoon and invited the family to Sunday dinner. Pot roast, I told him. Gerald's recipe, the one with the red wine and the pearl onions that takes 4 hours. Apple pie, because Sophie won't eat anything else for dessert. He said that sounded wonderful. His voice was easy and warm. I was glad. They arrived at 5. The children were through the door before the car fully stopped. Eli had a soccer tournament story that took 12 minutes to tell, and I loved every second of it. Sophie climbed into my lap and showed me 2 loose teeth simultaneously, which was both impressive and slightly alarming. We sat down and ate. Daniel poured the wine. Melissa complimented the pot roast, which was good because I had made it with care. We talked about the school year starting up and whether Eli needed new cleats and how Sophie had decided she wanted to be a marine biologist after watching a nature documentary for 45 minutes. It was a good dinner. I let it be a good dinner. When Eli and Sophie ran off to the living room to watch a movie, I stood up, poured 3 cups of coffee, and came back to the table. I sat down and wrapped my hands around my cup. I said, "I want to talk about the cabin." Daniel said, "Oh, sure. Actually, I've been meaning to bring that up. We haven't used it nearly as much this summer, and I'm a little worried about the gutters. I was thinking we should get someone out there before fall." He was looking at his coffee. Not at me. I said, 61 bookings, Daniel. 14 months. $22,430. The room went very quiet. Melissa set her cup down with a small click. Her jaw tightened in exactly the way I had expected it would. She said, "We were going to tell you." I said, "When?" She said, "We were building the account up. We were going to put it toward cabin repairs. The place needed updates." I said, "The roof was inspected 2 years ago. It is fine." Daniel said, "Mom, we were trying to help. The cabin is an asset that was sitting idle most of the year. We were generating income off something that was just going unused." I said, "It is not an idle asset, Daniel. It is where I go to feel close to your father." He looked down at the table. I said, "I am not here to argue with you. I want to tell you what I have done." I told them about the county deed office, about Grace, about the certified letter and the platform transfer and the complete earnings document. I laid it out the way I used to lay out a math lesson, clearly and in order, and I watched them understand exactly where they stood. Melissa said, "So you shut down the listing?" I said, "No. I kept it. The listing is in my name now. The income comes to me. Grace is addressing the prior earnings separately." Daniel said, "Mom will pay you back. Whatever you say, we'll work it out." I said, "Grace will send you the documentation. I have no doubt you will." He started to say something else. I raised one hand, gently, the way you stop a conversation without cruelty. I said, "I want to tell you what I have done with the income going forward." I told them about Eli and Sophie's education fund. I told them it was already open and growing, and that it would be there when those children needed it. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together and looked at the table. Daniel said quietly, "I'm sorry, Mom." I said, "I know you are, sweetheart." I put my hand on his arm. I said, "I love you. I love this family. But you need to understand, clearly and completely, that the cabin belongs to me. Not as an asset. As home." He nodded. He couldn't quite speak. We finished our coffee. The financial matter took several months to fully resolve. Grace was patient and precise, and Daniel and Melissa did exactly what they said they would, which told me something important about who they still were underneath the mistake they had made. I kept the listing active through the fall and into the following year. I updated it to include a welcome letter about the history of the cabin, about Gerald, about the redbud trees on the eastern shore. Not the whole story. Just enough to let guests understand that they were not in a product. They were in a home that had been loved for a long time. The reviews changed after that. People mentioned the letter specifically. A family from Columbus wrote that it was the most personal vacation rental they had ever stayed in. A couple from Tennessee said they read my letter to each other on the porch, their first evening, out loud like a story. One family from Ohio sent me an actual handwritten letter after their stay. They said they felt like guests in a real home. They said they hoped to come back every summer for as long as I would have them. I cried a little reading that. The good kind. In October, Melissa called and asked if the whole family could come up for a weekend. No booking. Just family. I said, of course. Come whenever you want. We roasted marshmallows at Gerald's fire pit on a Friday night in October. The kids wore their winter coats and Sophie dropped her marshmallow clean into the fire and screamed and laughed about it at the same time. Eli caught a small bass off the dock and released it very carefully. the way I had taught him to do the summer before. Daniel and I sat on the porch after the kids went to bed. He said he was sorry. Really sorry. I put my hand on his arm and I said, I know, sweetheart. I know. Some things do not need more words than that. I still drive up to Lake Redbud when the world gets too loud. I sit in the left-hand chair, Gerald's chair, and I drink my coffee and I watch the loons and I tell him what has been happening. He was a good listener, Gerald. It still is. Eli and Sophie have an education fund with their names on it, adding to itself a little every month. When Sophie is old enough to understand, I am going to tell her where it came from. I will tell her that certain things have names on them for a reason. And if you take care of what belongs to you, it has a way of taking care of you right back. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to quietly take back something that was yours? I would love to hear your story. The moment Gerald hit the ground, I was already moving. My son grabbed my arm and said, "Mom, just wait for the ambulance." I looked at him very calmly and said, "Let go of my arm, Ryan. Right now. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Margaret Elaine Bowman. I am 72 years old, and I spent 40 years working emergency rooms. Not answering phones in an emergency room. Not filing charts. Working the floor, the trauma bay, the resuscitation room. Level 1 trauma center for the last 22 years of my career. I have started hearts. I have held pressure on wounds that would make most people faint. I have looked at a patient for 30 seconds and known something the attending hadn't caught yet, and I have said so clearly enough that it got acted on. I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this so you understand what was being dismissed when certain people in my family started looking past me like I was a potted plant with opinions. I retired 6 years ago. My knees gave out before my mind did, which I consider a personal victory. I cried in the parking lot on my last day. Not because I was sad exactly. Because 40 years of something is not just a job. It is a language. And I was afraid of forgetting how to speak it. I should have known better. Some things do not leave you. My son Ryan is 43. He works in commercial real estate. He is a good man in most ways, and I mean that sincerely. He is a devoted father to his daughter Lily. Patient and reliable. But he married Cassandra 9 years ago, and somewhere in those 9 years, he began borrowing her way of looking at me. Not with disrespect, exactly. More like what you might call gentle condescension. The way you talk to someone who used to be important and now you think needs to be managed carefully. Cassandra is smart and organized, and she loves her family. I believe that completely. But she had a particular blind spot about me. I think she had a mother-in-law in her head before she ever really knew me. And that is who she saw when she looked at me. The first real sign came about 3 years after the wedding. Small enough that I almost didn't register it as a sign at all. Lily was 4 years old and running a fever. I was visiting for the weekend. I took her temperature, noted the rash spreading across her torso, and I recognized the pattern. Roseola. Harmless in most cases, but worth confirming that evening rather than waiting until morning. I said gently, "This looks like it might be roseola. I would feel better if you called the pediatrician tonight. Not because I am alarmed. Just to be sure." Cassandra gave me that particular smile. The one that meant she had already decided. I appreciate it, Margaret. But we spoke to the nurse line earlier, and they said it is probably just a virus. The rash pattern. I started. We've got it handled. Ryan said. Not unkind. Just final. The pediatrician confirmed roseola the next morning. Nobody connected those two things out loud. I didn't bring it up either. But something shifted in me. A small, precise awareness. Like when you are monitoring a patient and one number moves just slightly outside the normal range. You don't panic. You watch. What I didn't notice yet was how often that scene would repeat itself, in different rooms, with different details. Over the next 2 years, I watched. And what I saw was a pattern. A consistent, quiet erasure. I would mention something medical at the dinner table, and the conversation would move around it like water moving around a stone. Ryan would change the subject. Cassandra would nod politely and then redirect to something else entirely. Once, when Cassandra's mother Diane mentioned offhandedly that she had been getting headaches on one side, I said carefully that the one-sided pattern was worth mentioning to her doctor. Cassandra said brightly, "Mom's already talked to her GP, she's all sorted." Diane had said nothing about her GP. Cassandra simply did not want the conversation to go where I was taking it. I tell you all of this because what happened at Thanksgiving did not come out of nowhere. We were all at Ryan and Cassandra's house. Her parents, Gerald and Diane. Her brother Marcus, his wife, and their son Tyler, who was 9 years old. The house was full and warm and smelled like turkey, and a candle that was supposed to smell like cinnamon, but mostly smelled like ambition. Tyler had been quiet all afternoon. Too quiet for a 9-year-old boy at a family holiday with cousins and a dog and a yard. He was sitting in the corner of the den, and he looked gray to me. Not sick from overeating gray. A different kind of gray. I know how to read that difference. I sat down next to him. I asked him how he was feeling. He said fine, just a little tired. I put my hand lightly on his forehead. No fever. But his lips were pale and slightly dry. I asked if he had eaten much that day. He said just a sandwich at lunch. I walked into the kitchen where Cassandra and her sister-in-law were finishing the last dishes, and I said, quietly, "I want to mention that Tyler doesn't look quite right to me. I'm not sounding an alarm, but it might be worth having Marcus take a closer look at him before dinner." Cassandra set down the serving spoon. She turned to face me. Her voice was pleasant, measured, but every woman in that kitchen heard every word. "Margaret," she said, "Tyler is fine. He's a tired child at a long family holiday. I know you spent your career in the ER and you're accustomed to seeing emergencies everywhere, but not every quiet child is a medical crisis. You're retired now. You can let yourself relax." The kitchen went very still. And here is what I did not do. I did not argue. I did not list my credentials. I did not mention roseola. I said, of course. I just wanted to mention it. And I walked back into the den and sat next to Tyler and talked to him about his favorite video games until someone called us all in for dinner. Tyler was fine that evening. So in one sense, Cassandra was right. But something in me went very quiet after that. Like a door closing softly in a house that has gotten too loud. And on the drive home that night, I made a decision. I was not going to fight for the right to be heard in that family. That was not in my nature, and it was not a battle worth having. But I was also, absolutely, not going to stop knowing what I knew. And I was not going to let what I knew go soft from sitting unused. What I did next is the part of this story that matters. In January, I registered for 2 continuing education courses through the State Nursing Association. Advanced Cardiac Life Support Recertification, a refresher on acute neurological emergencies, updated protocols. The kind of courses I had taken routinely throughout my career and let slide slightly in retirement. I drove to a community college on 3 separate Saturdays and sat in a room full of nurses half my age. I was the best student there, not because I needed to prove it to anyone, because it was mine. I started volunteering 2 mornings a week at a free health clinic across town. Blood pressure checks, patient education, intake triage. Nothing dramatic, but it kept my hands sharp and my instincts current. The clinic director, a physician named Dr. Anselmo, told me after my 2nd month that I had the fastest and most accurate intake assessments on the team. She started asking my opinion on complicated cases. I did not tell Ryan and Cassandra a word of any of this. And then there is one more thing I did, and it is the smallest thing, but it matters more than the rest. On my evening walks through Ryan and Cassandra's neighborhood during my stays there, I had noticed something. 3 houses down from theirs, a family had an AED unit mounted on the exterior wall of their garage. The kind of public access defibrillator that some neighborhoods install as a community resource. A large yellow cabinet, visible right from the street. I noted exactly where it was. I noted how it was accessed, which is standard information printed on the outside of all public units. I filed it away the way I used to file away the location of every crash cart on every floor I ever worked. You never need it until you need it immediately. 4 months passed. April became May. May became June. Then came the 4th of July. The party was at Ryan and Cassandra's. A proper backyard celebration. Red, white, and blue tablecloth with little stars. Cassandra's parents had driven up from 2 states south. Gerald was 68 years old. A big barrel-chested man, loud in the good way. The kind of man who considers feeding people an act of love and acts on it constantly. He had been marinating ribs since the day before. I liked Gerald. He was genuinely easy to like. I arrived mid-afternoon, and I noticed 2 things about Gerald within the first 10 minutes, without trying to notice them. His color was slightly off. Not dramatically. You would not have caught it unless you were in the habit of reading people the way I am. A grayish cast under his summer tan. And he was sweating more than the temperature warranted. He had also declined a 2nd beer, which Diane made a small joke about, because Gerald declining a cold beer at a 4th of July party was simply not a thing that happened. I did not say anything. I had learned my lesson about saying things. But I kept myself close. I refilled his iced tea. I pulled a chair near his. We talked about baseball and his granddaughter starting kindergarten in the fall. I watched his breathing without appearing to watch anything at all. About an hour into the party, Gerald stood up to check on the grill. And I saw it. Not the fall. What happened just before the fall? A slight pause in his movement. The hand going to the center of his chest, not grabbing, just touching, like brushing something away that was not there. the jaw tightening for just a moment, his eyes going slightly distant. He sat back down heavily. I was beside him before the chair had fully taken his weight. "Gerald," I said. My voice was steady and low. "Talk to me." I'm fine," he said. He gave me the smile men give when they do not want to make a fuss. "Just the heat." "Where is the pain?" He looked at me. And I believe in that moment, he understood that I was not asking the way a worried party guest asks. He understood that I was asking as someone who had heard this answer before and knew what came next. "My jaw," he said. "And here." He placed his hand flat on his sternum, then touched his left arm. "Okay," I said. "You are going to be absolutely fine. But we are going to get you some help right now. Sit still for me." I turned and I looked across the yard to Ryan. I said his name once. Not loudly. Not with alarm in it. Just his name, in the particular tone I learned sometime around 1989. The tone that moves people across a room without their understanding why. He was beside me in 4 seconds. I said, "Call 911 right now. Tell them, 68-year-old male, chest pain radiating to the jaw and left arm, diaphoretic, onset approximately 5 minutes ago. Give them this address. Stay on the line." Ryan looked at Cassandra. Just for 1 second. A flicker. I said, "Ryan." "Now." He called. Cassandra was there then, her face white. She said, "What is happening? What is wrong with him?" I said, "Cassandra, I need you to go 3 houses in that direction." I pointed without looking away from Gerald. There is a yellow cabinet mounted on a garage wall. Bring it to me. Run. She ran. I will tell you something honest about that. I felt a kind of relief watching her run. Because she trusted me. When it truly mattered, she trusted me. I kept Gerald talking. About the ribs on the grill. About his granddaughter. About whether the Cubs had a shot this season. He was pale and his breathing was shallow, but he was conscious and he was with me. I kept his attention on my voice and my face, and away from whatever fear was trying to come in from the edges. Cassandra came back with the AED cabinet, slightly out of breath. I opened it and set it up, and I talked Gerald through every step of what was happening and what we were waiting for. The other guests had drawn back in a wide, silent circle. I heard someone crying softly somewhere behind me. I did not look up. The paramedics arrived in 6 minutes. 6 minutes is fast. When I heard the truck pull into the driveway, I stood and walked out to meet them, and I gave a report the way I have given 1,000 reports. Symptom onset. Presentation. Vitals by observation. Timeline. Current mental status. One of the paramedics, a young woman with quick eyes, looked directly at me and said, "Are you medical?" I said, 40 years ER nursing. She nodded once. The way you nod at someone you recognize. Good catch, she said. They took Gerald in the ambulance. Diane went with him. Ryan and Cassandra followed in the car. I stayed at the house with Lily. I sat in the backyard alone as the evening came on. The ribs were still on the grill, wrapped in foil, going cold. A neighbor's fireworks started somewhere a few streets over, low booms in the distance. I drank sweet tea, and I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired in the right way. The old way. The way I used to feel driving home after a long shift that had gone as well as a hard thing can go. Ryan called at 9:30. Gerald had had a SDEMI, a serious myocardial infarction. He was in surgery. He was stable. The cardiologist had told the family that the early, accurate assessment, combined with the precise information relayed to the 911 dispatcher, had gotten Gerald to the operating table within a window that made the difference between full recovery and permanent cardiac damage. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then I went inside and checked on Lily. Ryan and Cassandra came home after midnight. Lily was asleep on the couch, under a blanket I had found in the hall closet. Cassandra walked into the backyard and sat down across from me at the table and was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "The doctor asked who assessed him before the paramedics arrived." I said, "I know how that question goes." She said, "We told him it was you." He said. She stopped, gathered herself. "He said you likely bought my dad 20 minutes he didn't have to spare." I didn't respond to that. She said, "I thought you were, I thought I was. A sweet retired lady who worries too much." I said, "Not unkind. Just clear." She looked at me and her eyes filled. "I'm sorry." She said, "Margaret, I am genuinely sorry." I looked at her for a moment. I thought about the kitchen going quiet on Thanksgiving, about driving home alone in the dark and making a decision, about January, a community college classroom on a cold Saturday morning, doing it again because it was who I was and no one was going to take that from me. "I know you are," I said, "and I accept that." I reached across the table and I held her hand. Because she was frightened and her father was in a hospital bed, and because I am not a cruel person and have never wanted to be. But I also said, quietly and clearly, "I need you to hear something, Cassandra. I have never stopped being what I am. I did not need your permission to keep being it. I am going to keep speaking up when I see something that worries me, because that is simply how I am built. You can choose to listen or not. But I hope after tonight, you will choose to listen." She squeezed my hand and nodded. She meant it. I could tell the difference. Gerald was home in 8 days. He came to Sunday dinner 3 weeks later, moving slower, complaining loudly about his cardiac diet, which everyone around that table took as a very encouraging sign. When I walked through the door, he got up from his chair, and he hugged me for a long time and did not say a single word. He didn't need to. Ryan and I talked about it later, just the two of us, over coffee at his kitchen table. He told me he was sorry. He said he had been following Cassandra's lead, without stopping to think about what he actually knew about me and what I was capable of. I told him I appreciated the honesty. I told him I needed him to trust me going forward. He said he did. I believe that he does. Things are different now. Not perfectly different. Nothing in any family is perfectly different after 9 years of a pattern. But when I mention something, there is a pause now. A real one. The kind that means someone is actually considering what you said rather than waiting for you to finish. Cassandra's mother Diane calls me sometimes just to check in. She told me last month that Gerald calls me his guardian angel. I told her to tell him I am nobody's angel. I am a nurse. There is a difference, and it is not a small one. I still volunteer at the clinic on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Dr. Anselmo asked me last week if I would consider taking on a leadership role in their community health outreach program. I told her I would think about it. I am thinking about it very seriously. I keep my nursing license current. I will keep it current until my hands will not let me, and probably a little longer than that. Not because anyone needs to see it. Not to prove anything to anyone in that family or anywhere else. Because it is mine. Because 40 years of knowing how to read a room, a body, a moment that does not belong to anyone else. It does not need to be validated. It does not need to be given back. You show up. You keep knowing what you know. And when the moment comes, you are ready. Tell me in the comments, has there ever been a moment where someone underestimated exactly who you were, and then life showed them the truth? Because I have a feeling I am not the only one.